And welcome to iProtest. This is Donald Jeffries coming to you from just outside the swamp-infested Washington, D.C., as I do every Friday at this time. And you hear some panning in the background, the lovely golden retriever Riley that you know I talk about her quite a bit. She's been kind of turning her nose up lately at my show. She used to be down here and be a regular listener, but she's down here because she's scared of the storm. So if if I suddenly get knocked off, it's because the third world power grids failed us again, which they do all too often. So I have a very interesting guest today, Lisa Marone, who's better known as Lawyer Lisa. She sued the government in the first SARS case. She wrote the book World on Mute. She has 3 post-secondary degrees, including environmental science with a minor in chemistry. She believes the climate game was communism. I think very few people here believe the climate change nonsense. So she's very active in terms of Palestinian rights and everything. So I'm going to let her, kind of lead this. She's pretty much become a thought criminal, like pretty much anybody listening to this show is. So, Lisa, thanks for coming on the show.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, and thanks to everybody who's watching and who is likewise a thought criminal. And I suppose for me, it was the truckers that might have woke me up in Canada, because I'm from Canada.
Ooh.
Yeah, and so I had friends on the ground at the time, and I was seeing the reporting live on CBC and what have you, and there was like a massive disconnect. And so that disconnect between what I knew was true, just it started to resonate. Why is that so? And always have been a dog with a bone. So I started scratching the surface, and I started doing small videos at first. And then one of the biggest thing was at the time, I don't know if you remember, but the Jordan Peterson case in Canada. And
yes, I
so,
think so.
so I started to realize, and it seemed odd, that speech was being criminalized, and in a specific setting, which was professional bodies. So before, your professional body wanted you to have excellence, or not steal from your clients, or not rape them, or what have you. And instead, they were coming up with right speak, and that grated on me. And I'd like to say God gave me a ski accident and put me in bed, because I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I had the opportunity to really do a deep dive and start researching. And what I found out was every way to earn a living, every occupation, and every occasionally was getting speech committees. Every committee had the same problem, which was the same one speech. And I don't know if we were knocked off there, because I lost you for a
No,
bit.
but you seem to be kind of getting
So I wrote
kind of a tinny
World
sound with you. So
on Mute
yeah.
at that
Yeah.
time. And I released it. I was in his category, and I got knocked off by Amazon in that category. So I suppose then I knew something was terms of laws and speech was so highly improbable, Donald, that I knew we were looking at a one world government, and I didn't need too much other convincing. And so we had the idea that every area, including lawyers, were getting a right speak or wrong speak. And that meant that your constitution was going to be displaced. So that meant there's the 3 powers of government. And if your judiciary can't rein in your executive, administrative, and legislative branches, then even if everything looks the same, it no longer functions the same. Because if a lawyer is disbarred for wrong speak, right? And so I decided I was going to stop working, and so that I could say all the things that other people could not say. right? Because they were hamstrung. And I realized we were the silent majority. So I realized the compliance that people had for right speak was entirely due to the professional organizations. And I mean, every way to earn a living. I have just discovered that in certain jurisdictions in the US now, they are trying to get people who mow the lawn to be registered. And so then you become part of the category of right speak. And I called it the 1B system because it didn't matter whether you were employed or not employed. In places like Africa, they had, I think it was called something not 411. And if you had improper speech about a candidate, i.e., you supported a non-globalist candidate for mayor or, whatever level, then you would be knocked off, you would be reported, and then you would no longer have the access to the internet. You could be called an extremist, or you could even go to jail. So they're influencing elections. I have cases, especially in Canada, where a candidate who brings forth emotion on, that children shouldn't have to undress in all ages washrooms and change rooms and fitness facilities. She brings emotion to that fact, so that modesty. And she was sent down to her speech committee. And that was the case of Lisa Robinson. So I documented all of these different areas. And I got to the idea, well, isn't that interesting? Under population activities, all speech that opposed death seemed to be wrong speak. So we had the idea of like, okay, so you can do, they were doing perinatal, so after birth abortion in California. But if you opposed it, with your speech, you lost your right to earn a living. So because that was defined as anti-women. So you couldn't oppose euthanasia. You couldn't oppose abortion. You couldn't oppose. And so all of these things, after a while, you couldn't oppose sterilization of minors. You couldn't oppose, dangerous hormones to minors. After a while, it all looked like, well, gee, these guys are genocidal and they don't want you to oppose genocide. And then eventually, I looked at the case of Sukti Bhakti, which was, he was charged with anti-Semitism. And he was charged with a hate crime. Mm-hmm. And they drilled it down and they called it minimizing the Holocaust.
This is in Canada?
No, this is in Germany. He was charged in Germany.
Yeah, because Canada, I know they all have those laws. U.S. doesn't have it yet, but okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Dr. Sukti Bhakti said, please, to the Israelis, don't get the green vax pass. Okay. And he compared that to the Star of David. And for that, it was called minimizing the Holocaust. And so then, right, it was called minimizing the Holocaust. And so it was an anti-Semitic hate crime. So here's a guy's warning Israelis not to do the vax pass. And so I saw that weaponization. And so after I wrote World on Mute, it wasn't a far cry after that to understand that the anti-Semitism hate speech was going to be featured larger and larger. And I have an environmental science degree with a minor in chemistry. And I grew up studying global warming in the traditional fashion. But I have a very curious mind, and when I saw that the solution to, CO2 in the atmosphere, like the carbon cycle, was communism and global citizens getting CO2 lifetime budgets, essentially, which I say are going to be paired with euthanasia and reproductive stuff, I started to investigate the science on that. At at some point, you just ended up seeing that what's propagated and what is truth, just they don't even jive. And for a lawyer, who had trusted the system somewhat. I mean, I always saw because I sued the government, and also in the first SARS case, there's corruption. Everybody can be corrupted, but I saw the global government, and I've been actively.
Sorry, my dog was trying to get through here, and she's going to mess the wires up. So we suddenly go off. It might not be the power; it might be her. So I'm trying to block her off. But I wanted to make sure because first of all, do you see the comment on the screen from RB Ham? And that he is, speaking of truckers, he was one of the leaders of the Canadian truckers, and he's been penalized up there. He's trying to get you on his podcast. So I think I gave you his information, or gave him your information.
We are going to do this podcast. I've just been traveling and got back today, and I'm about to be out of the city again. So you're in Canada now, right? You're still in Canada? Yeah, I'm still in Canada.
Okay, so you're working. You don't have. We have a First Amendment here. We don't pay much attention to it, but you don't even have that in Canada. So how it's a little trickier. And you're talking about euthanasia. You have the crazy suicide hotline up there that you have. So you're working with some crazier stuff than we have down here. But so if it was the Canadian truckers, the convoy, that kind of triggered you and woke you up. So before that, were you practicing law as a normal lawyer? I mean, were you not seeing too much that was going on before that you objected to?
So I was a mother of 4 young kids, right, and working full time, and so my focus was up and down, get to bed,
right.
Just I was busy. I think. When you realize the subversion is at every level, when you realize and understand that every type of power structure has now been occupied, you can't even go to a farmer's market where the farmer's market now isn't really organized by the candle makers and the artisans, right? Because food is a part of the global structure that's being attacked. Well, it was partly the schools even when I saw the curriculum. My kids were coming home with books that were satanic. They were coming home with books that were horror genre. They were describing kidnappings of children. My 8-year-old asked me to do a book project with him that he was assigned the book, so you can't say the teacher didn't know what was in it. And the first story in the book was a child being kidnapped, and a little girl, and she was so upset. She was then forced to be a slave to this guy, this monster, and she cried a lot. So he said, you can go home and say goodbye to your mom, but if you don't come back, something bad will happen to you. And she doesn't come back, and he kills her. And that was a story for an 8-year-old. And I thought, oh, what's going on? What exactly is going on in our world? So between the truckers, and then, my kids were getting lunch and learn to become transgender for the month of November.
Jeez.
So, go to the gym, get free pizza. And so at every level, there was this new agenda everywhere. And the subversion was everywhere. So if you scratch the surface at all, you got someplace. And so once I started scratching the surface, I went rather deep, and I found a lot of stuff, and including for your audience, if you want to discuss the Noahide laws, because they are moving at scale in the U.S. Yeah.
Discuss it. Describe what the Noahide laws are to people.
Well, most people know the Sharia laws because Sharia is,
yes, we hear a lot about that. Yes.
Right. And if people want to put the context on Sharia laws, think of 9/11 and think of the indestructible passports, right, that you found, right, that made you anti-Muslim. And Sharia law is kind of like that. It's not that it's a make-believe system. It's that you're looking at that when something else is really what's moving. And so every president either Carter or Reagan, both of them, I think, they started signing affirmations to the Noahide Law. And then in 1991, Bush, he put through the Noahide laws. His government put through the Noahide laws, and they became public law. Let me look it up here. They're sitting on your books already. Let's see. Let's get the right version of it. Okay, so in 1982, Proclamation 4921. In 1991, Public Law 10214. And then since then, every president has done proclamations all the way up to Donald Trump. They signed proclamations recognizing Education Day. So Education Day is how it slipped in. And the Noahide laws are 7 laws, which they sound authentically okay in some ways, except for under Judaism, because this comes in under Judaism, you have 2 classes of people. You have Jews, and everybody else is forced to become Noahide. So it's a government religion. And when it came in Public Law 102, whatever I said, they said it's the bedrock and foundation since the dawn of time. So it is meant in language to come before the Constitution, to subvert the Constitution. And so Noahide laws have the Noahide judges, which are at the top, it's the Sanhedrin, which is acknowledged through Trump's Peace Board. And on the other side, it's acknowledged through the UN. So everybody knows the 2030 agenda, and everybody knows the Agenda 21, but they describe the Noahide laws as the post-2030 agenda. So we're coming into the post-2030 era, and no one's discussed the Noahide laws. It's the best kept secret. And so do you want to be in a judicial system where your judges think of you as a lesser being? Because when you investigate the Talmud, you find out that the Goyim have the souls of animals. Unfortunately, I am an animal soul.
Yeah, me too.
And that
me too.
Our children are no better than animals, and it's better to eat with a dog than it is with the Goyim. Mm-hmm. And so you have a very, I would say, religious fundamentalism that views the most amount of humanity as lesser beings, and those are the ones judging you. And for those who have their own religious belief system, the Noahide laws are the universal religion. And you're not under like Sharia law, you're converted to a Muslim and then you're equal with every other Muslim. Under Noahide laws, which are set up in Congress, they're set up in states, they're set up at the UN. They're known as the international law, and I can take you to the UN too and share screens and show you all that. But you're a second grade citizen, and it's blasphemy to, for instance, have another religion. And certainly for Christians, and a good portion of Zionist Christians are out there supporting Israel. Mm-hmm. And, their belief system is outlawed, and every single violation of the Noahide laws has instant decapitation, right? It's death by the sword. And so that's also a very difficult thing. And everything's done by deception. My Maimonides wrote something called the Laws of Kings and Wars, and I'm going to share it to your audience for the
Sure.
show notes.
Sure.
Right? Because that's sort of the basis under which these Noahide laws come from. And he was a rabbi in the 1200s. He has a hatred of Christianity that is admirable in terms of how hateful it is. I suppose for some people, I am Christian. And his view is that he decides how it is that a Messiah can be called a Messiah. And he decides when it is that the Messiah must come by. And we have a date, by the way, for your audience. He set down a date, and the Jewish Messiah and the Jewish religion would then have a stale date, best before date, and we happen to be quite close to it. It's October 2nd, 2027. So in the 1200s or whatever, he set out this date that the Messiah must come by. He says, the third temple must be constructed, and essentially they have to have wars of mitzvah, which are mandatory wars, and they have discretionary wars. And they describe the 7 nations under which that the wars of mitzvah must be conducted. And so you can look at all the wars in the Middle East since Bush as the wars of mitzvah, which is quite interesting. And the last war of mitzvah is against what they call Edom. And Edom, that's exactly how they pronounce it. The Edomites are who they say was Esau, and they say that was the Christian kingdom. So that's going to be Greece, the former Byzantine kingdom. That's all of Europe. That's Australia. That's New Zealand. That's the USA for sure. And that's Canada. It's everywhere in Europe. I think I said it's everywhere the Christians went. So that's also South America. That's Mexico. And that's a war of mitzvah. And so we see subversion as well. And so these are all coincidences until they're not. Like once they're in my book, I said everything that's described as a hate speech is related to the one world government. And so recently I had a post, and you can find my posts at lawyerlisa.substack.com, and please support my work, World on Room. Everything that is associated with the global government will be described as hate. And so what you have as hate speech is the identifier. It fingers them. It's like a black hole. So once you have something described as hate speech, it's a global, it's part of the global authority. It's part of their plan. And so while all religions are occupied, like every other power structure is subverted, I think the globalists have decided to utilize Judaism very, very much. Likely, it's very convenient. The Messiah has not come, so they can put their own in there. And when the Messiah comes, you're supposed to have a world government. So the 1948 creation, or the Balfour Declaration, if you want to go further back, is the methodology to get this, to meet Maimonides, the laws of kings and wars.
Well, wouldn't the it seems that the obvious answer to this is that the Noahide laws violate the so-called separation of church and state. If the ACLU was what it used to be, I would imagine they'd be involved in that. But no one appears to complain about the Noahide laws, are they? I mean, you are.
Oh, yeah, I've investigated the position of the ACLU on the Noahide laws. They're radio silent. And this, we have equivalent organizations in Canada, and they're, the communist sort of speech committees over here supported Bill C-9, which is Bill C-9 in Canada is our anti-Semitism law. They call it a hate speech law. But only 5 people really supported it, 5 organizations. All 5 were Jewish organizations. All 5 were Jewish organizations, from the B'nai B'rith all the way up. And I was given a Zoom recording of those 5 organizations speaking amongst themselves about Bill C-9. And they disclosed that only people who are a recognized group can complain about hate speech. And so they said, because Palestinians are not a recognized group, the Jewish Zionists do not have to worry about their speech at all, because no Palestinian can ever complain that Jewish Zionist speech is hate speech. So you have both that. So in this video, they're saying we don't have to worry about any complaints against us. And they list 2 reasons. One, that the Attorney General won't even let private prosecutions against Jewish people for hate speech. And I thought to myself, how do they know the speech that they might have, or one of their members might have in the future? And how do they know the Attorney General would disallow a private prosecution on that basis? So you have the implication that the Attorney General won't be prosecuting Jews for hate speech. You have the implication that he'll block, every Attorney General in every province across Canada will block hate speech against Jews. So it's not everyone is equal before the law. And that the group that they would be exposed to hate speech prosecutions, they don't have to worry about, and that's Palestinians. So I never wanted to go down this rabbit hole, and I think I found out about the Noahide laws, and I sat on it for 7-8 months before I had processed it, and it's just, I've had such good Jewish friends. They've all to a dime been excellent to me. One was at my wedding as maid of honor. In law school, I had wonderful Jewish friends, and I dated a Jewish man, and his family, if they were anti-Christian, just loved me completely and treated me so well. What I think is this theocracy that's moving has to hide it from the Jews too. And I think the Reformed Jews are atheists, because once you go down the Talmud, you're into some pretty ugly things. But the complicity, obviously at the highest levels, is all around the world, because you're having the same hate speech laws go in everywhere.
Yep. To protect the same groups, to protect the exact same group. But so you said you had 4 children. So you're raising 4 children. I understand all this crazy stuff is not going to, until maybe you started seeing this stuff coming from their school, that sets off alarms in your head. But before that, when you were a young lawyer, dating a Jew, going to law school and everything, at that point, you probably weren't looking at any of this stuff. Or describe, to the point where, other than the convoy, the trucker convoy, maybe the things happening in your children's school, in terms of what, because you've obviously done some deep studies here in terms of Noahide laws and what's in the. I mean, I've heard so many things that are in the Talmud, and if half of it really are in there, then we should be concerned. But at what point, and how do you said you had a Jewish maid of honor and everything? How do they feel about you now? Have they disowned you? How does your family feel about you? Have they disowned you? I mean, have you lost friends because of this? These.
Well, I mean, the COVID operation, I started speaking out against the vaccine, and so that's where I lost a lot of people.
Yeah, me too.
That's the COVID operation, right? And I was duped by the vaccine, but I saw medical apartheid being set up, and my mother wasn't vaccinated. And I thought, if you're going to come out against my mom, I'm going to speak up. And so, I mean, I had that isolation already. I started experiencing that isolation the minute I spoke up as a lawyer. And like in my book, I note that, and I delve into the US quite a lot. I have a chapter called Show Me Your Papers. And it's how the lawyers organized vax pass sort of systems in the US. To note, you've probably done deep dives on the Masons, but the language of mandate comes from the Masons. So it's a way to take everybody who's already in a secret society and co-opt all of them. So your police officers, your firemen who are low-level Masons, your lawyers who are low-level Masons, all the entire system, the Masonic system gathers the goy, in a certain way. And so mandate comes from a lodge, okay? So if the head of the lodge issues a mandate, you have to follow it. You can appeal it. But if the mandate comes from the lodge, you have no right of appeal. So a mandate isn't a legal term. It was a Masonic term, right? Because the idea that it was described, you have a mandate for masks. Well, there was no legislation passed. There was no bylaws passed. There was no, right? So the mandate compliance system spoke to the Masonic system. And of course, when Fauci came out on his first, COVID announcement, he came out and stood with his hand half veiled in his shirt. Yeah, and that, right, that also speaks to the Masonic order. Have I lost friends? At this point, it's the friends that I'm losing I'm speaking to. I'm doing this for. I'm trying to wake the world up, and I know there's personal consequences, and I can tell you I've had 2 DEW attacks on me. One at an event I went to, and one just I followed the guy and I got his license plate. I've had a kidnapping attempt. I for some reason am someone they fear, and so be it. It is what it is.
Well, how do you? Because how old are your children? I mean, how do they feel about this?
I don't put them onto my podcasts. They're young enough that I don't give them.
Okay, so they don't really have an idea what your beliefs are necessarily.
I discuss a few things definitely with them, right? Because you can't send them to school to the without them giving them some tools of discernment in their world. Mm-hmm. But life can get very difficult very quickly.
I can't imagine.
So I want to shelter them to a certain extent. But they know that I speak up for what I believe. And I hope I'm a role model for them in terms of that will have consequences. But I'm also speaking up for them, because to leave the world in silence is not something I want. And I also, to a certain extent now, I know I'm followed by a lot of Jewish people because they're baited into my area, because, I take these Zoom calls with them discussing such horrible things, and I put it on there. And then I do deep dives into their own belief systems and expose it with the view that a lot of them are probably, they believe that they've been propagandized since birth.
Sure.
Right? They've been propagandized since birth. They have no idea what the system is. Right? Like I discovered, and this is really disgusting, but the yeshiva, this is the Rebbe Noahide law people, they pray 3 times a day and to curse the Jewish descent and Christians first. They call them the Nazarenes. Christians are the Nazarenes. The Nazarenes are followers of Jesus of Nazareth, right?
Mhm.
So the slur word would be Naza. One Naza. What's two Nazas? Is that a Nazi?
Mhm,
Right?
yeah.
And so they want to blot them out from the book of life, right? And so the Jewish descent is as vulnerable as Christians. And I see the divide and conquer op everywhere. And there's two things I think we need to do to win is never stop talking, and I think that's going to hurt some of us. And I detail that extensively. Please get the book, World on Mute. But they wouldn't erect the perfect censorship across the world.
I lost you for a second there, Lisa. Something happened to your connection, Lisa. I can't hear you really.
Paired to
Lisa,
their surveillance state.
Okay, now you're back. We lost you for a second. I don't know what happened there.
Well, sure. I said that they wouldn't erect the perfect, censorship program if they weren't afraid of our speech. If our speech wouldn't take them down. And for people who aren't Christian and don't know the book of Revelation, if you just think of it as a metaphor, you don't have to, take on Christ like I do. But Jesus comes back with a sword from his mouth, right? A double-edged sword from his mouth. So the metaphor there for those who aren't Christian is that he takes on these devil-worshipping assholes with his mouth, with his words. And the word of God becomes a weapon itself in end times. And so Bill C9, is coming for the Bible. Well, that's really odd, isn't it? Because the globalists will not do anything that's out of their wheelhouse. They're just so focused on assembling the world order. So for them, the Bible actually is something frightening. And everybody knows the Epstein files. Well, the Old Testament is the first release of the Epstein files. It's just replete with child sacrifice, child eating, and everything that God's mad at is it's the entire Epstein class. So, in some ways we're not in a fight since I woke up or since Donald Jeffries woke up, or we're in the same fight for the last 6,000 years. And I think partly reading the Bible helped me discover that too, and understand just how important this battle is. And you know what? When they came for the word of God, I'm a really strong believer in Christ. When they came for the word of God, I'm like, well, there's no topic off limits anymore. Sorry. Like maybe, I'm afraid of not earning a living, or maybe I'm afraid of whatever. You come for God. That's it. Sorry.
Well, what do you make of it? Because again, I've been at this a long time, and I said I was far left for a long time, and then I got so far left I started to bleed over to the far right. They meet when you get far enough extremes. There's a crossover. So I started learning about it, and I started reading books about Jews, and this was back then, a long time, 80s, 90, and I found the term Zog, Sinusite, which was forbidden. Now Candace Owens talks about it openly. Obviously books questioning the Holocaust and everything else. This is the stuff you see on so many podcasts now. It's talked about openly. And what do you think? I mean, there's some of us that believe this is like a trap, or because why are they letting people say these things openly? Are they trying to lure us into the open, and then we're going to be in the FEMA camps? Why? Because they've never allowed this stuff to be talked about. The Talmud, I mean, I'm familiar with the stuff that they claim was in the Talmud for a long time. Now people are talking about it. Black podcasters are talking about it openly, about Jesus boiling in excrement and all that. I heard that a lot. Why do you think they're allowing that? Because they're ranting and raving about it, but it is being allowed to be talked about.
Okay, so Anti-Semitism is necessary for some of their prophecies to come true, for one thing. There's a threefold reason. So one of the Maimonides, it has to happen, is that Maimonides, the Rambam, wrote that all the Jews have to return to Israel, right? There has to be this ingathering. So Jewish people have to feel the hatred. They have to believe the Bondi attacks. They have to believe all that. They have to see this discussion, and they have to, quote, return. And so I've got to say, anybody who's Jewish who opposes all this and doesn't understand how to do battle with this and doesn't want to speak about it, just leave Israel. So that's part of it. They have to have this ingathering of the Jews. Now, I could go into the Bible and how none of this makes sense, but that's probably a different podcast. So the second reason, and this was even what I guess I suspect Acts was about, and what Facebook was about, was to gather who's who, was to enumerate who's who. And when you look at Mayo in China, when they introduced the communist state, there was a period of, so the government was nasty. Okay, call that the COVID era. Then there were the citizens were allowed to post what they thought about the government and what was wrong on it and give feedback. And they put like big, huge kind of public bulletin boards. Like they did collect everybody who spoke and then killed them all. They had their list. So you're not wrong. You can develop your kill list. But, your 911.
Keep talking. I have to block my dog. I'll keep talking.
Yeah, the 911 in the U.S., that's answered by Israel, right? So you can literally have the consequences before FEMA. You can be triaged or maybe not picked up or all kinds of things. So your healthcare system is a collection point. It doesn't have to be FEMA. But let's talk about FEMA a little bit and the ICE camps. Because I think it was January 2023, Biden and Trudeau signed something called the Declaration of North America with the then president of Mexico. So if you have the Declaration of Independence starting the USA, the Declaration of North America is your bookend, right? It's the end of the USA. It's the beginning of the North American state. And you think, oh, well, how could that possibly be? But when you think the Declaration of North America was signed, that wasn't when there was the internet or phones or anything. The plebes wouldn't have known about the Declaration of Independence necessarily for a long time. And so the plebes, us, don't know that the DNA has been started. So the Declaration of North America has started the North American Union, and it's under communism. And so then you also have the Bill of Rights. The new Communist Bill of Rights was signed by Anthony Blinken and Melanie Joly and the counterpart in Mexico. So, which also sets it up all under DEI. And under DEI, every race is allowable except for non-Jewish whites. So how it works in all human rights laws now, and including in Canada, is that racism is now defined as, an action against the racialized.
Right.
Or Jews.
Marginalized groups, persons of color. Yeah.
Right. Racialized. So I was, at some point I was like you, I was on the left. But that, so a white person isn't protected, and they're not protected under the communism, and they're not protected under the Noahide laws. And I think the Noahide laws are going to be based on a racialized system eventually. The idea is to eliminate all the non-Jewish whites and then have a visual ability to decide who's the Noahites, right? And that accords with how the Ethiopian Jews were treated by the Rebbe Schneerson, and there's all kinds of good exposés, if you know how to hunt them, on what was done to the Ethiopian Jews based on their race and the vaccines they got. So you have this racial ethno supremacy going on. It really is like the whole states.
Well,
The whole
wouldn't you say that the no-hide laws are really kind of a more of a manifestation of what we've had in this country my whole lifetime? I don't know how far back that goes, but those are the kosher laws where we have kosher labels on food. We have the little U, I think, and the P, and the Jewish, and that's when they're blessed by rabbis who I think are paid. I don't know who they're paid by to do it, but again, that's not how is that not a separation of church? Imagine if a Catholic priest was blessing food. I think somebody would be complaining, but that's a part. We say kosher. That's part of no-hide laws, isn't it? Kosher.
Well, I think that's a possible incidental or an agreement with it. The Noahide laws are being adopted by all of your states. Every governor has adopted the Noahide laws in the U.S. And now there's a map that Chabad has put up. They're going city to city across the U.S. and they're making the town councilors and your town mayors sign the Noahide laws. And so one of the violations of the Noahide laws is that if you see someone violating the Noahide laws and you let them do it, i.e., you don't kill them, you yourself are killed. So it sets up a system. You make all of these mayors all of a sudden liable to the Noahide laws. So this whole system also works with the degradation of law and order because it's Hegelian dialectic. You create the problem of no law and order, no insufficient punishment. Rape's not punished, pedophilia is not punished. Like all of this stuff is very disruptive. In Canada, break and enter is just about legal. And then you have, we'll come in with this morality, right? We'll come in with this morality, and there are no prisons. They don't want prisons in the Noahide laws because it's instant decapitation. And so we're in the war, in terms of the war in the Middle East. That war is squaring down that October 2nd, 2027 date, right? So all the rabbis, if I can find the date, they can, who know anything, know that that's the date Maimonides said the Jewish redemption had to come by. So how they calculated it was, they say there's 1,000 years for every day of creation. So we're coming up close to the year 6,000. I think we're 5,507, 5,876, something like that. And he said that the last 6,000 to 7,000 years, by the way, they think at the 7,000 year, the whole planet disappears. But between 6,000 and 7,000, that's 1,000 years of Jewish rest. It's their Shabbat, and they get 2,800 slaves each, and that's
it's almost like the 71 virgin brides, huh? Interesting.
Yeah, but it's on this planet. They get the slaves on this planet.
Oh, okay. So they get it. Okay.
Right, it's on this planet. And that's the Jewish Shabbat. And he said, so the Friday night before Shabbat, that is equivalent to 200 years prior to this Messianic era. And that's the date by which the Messiah has to come by. So he put it in stone. He wrote a date. He's like, yeah, never mind the Old Testament. Never mind those prophecies. Never mind Daniel 7, never mind the end of the second temple. We're going to deal with this new date that Maimonides came up with. This is the Ben Shapiro's and whatever of the world. And so that date's fast approaching. And so that war is going to need that Al-Aqsa Mosque down, right? And so the Iran war is going to need the permission from Jordan and Iran to take that mosque down and get that temple up. And then whoever's in charge of Israel when that temple goes up is the declared Messiah. Now, what's interesting is Trump. Trump said maybe he's got a 90-something. He's got a 90% approval rating in Israel, and really well liked there. And maybe he can just run for prime minister there, because then you'd have the Jared Kushner line as the messianic line. Is anyone from David? Now in Kabbalah, which Trump's a Kabbalist. And, he didn't convert in 2016 to Judaism. His father, Fred Trump, funded Chabad in New York. He gave them the land to put up the Chabad, centers, and then funded them every year. Fred Trump did. Fred Trump had his own rabbi. So, that's kind of interesting. That's Trump's dad. And Kabbalah, Marla Maples, right, when she was married to Trump, started studying Kabbalah with one of the lead Kabbalists. So what a coincidence that happened. And of course, men veiled as women is a prized, it's very valuable. It's satanic, of course, but it's also very Kabbalist. It's very Hollywood. And you have a lot of that. So he would be fine with being the messianic line, right? Mm-hmm. And you had the Rothschilds bail him out of his casino fiasco bankruptcy. So the Rothschilds featuring as the BIS, that's very important. Iran war, they also didn't have a central bank loyal to the Rothschilds. Venezuela didn't, and Cuba didn't. So those are some interesting points. Mm-hmm. But Netanyahu, who his father's name was Milevsky, so changed his name to Netanyahu. And
didn't he grow up in Philadelphia or something? Was he in Philadelphia?
Well, he was originally from, maybe, do you mean Benjamin?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, yes. And his father was from Poland.
Yeah.
Okay, Milevsky. And so Milevsky changed to Netanyahu. In Kabbalah, Yahweh, right? God, Yahweh. Mm-hmm. If you're the Messiah, you will have part of the word Yahweh in the name. So what did he change his son's name to? Netanyahu, right? So they became, so that is a reference in Kabbalah as to being of God. So, and everything is completely gamed in terms of trying to fit within the Jewish religion. So are they Jews who call themselves Jews? The people, the globalists at the top, have they gamed the Jews? Have they absorbed them? They've absorbed the Catholics. They've absorbed the Christian Zionists. They're in every sort of system, the globalists. They're at your school. Yes, and so we just happen to be alive. During this lead up to October 2nd, 2027.
Absolutely. I want to just address who was somebody saying here. I'm going to address a comment in here. He only commented one time, but somebody's talking about unprofessional. It's apostle. What happened to his comment? I'm trying to find it. Oh yeah, forsaken apostle, terribly distracting and unprofessional. Don, get it together, please. If you're talking about, I had to get up for my dog, and I'm still holding her. There's nobody else in my house. I work alone. I don't have a producer sitting in my little office in the basement here. So I have a dog here who's I don't want her. She's done this before where she starts going back and forth and somehow disconnected because she knocks over some wires. So I hope that wasn't too unprofessional for her. I just wanted to address that. And if you don't mind, in a couple minutes, what I usually do, Lisa, the second half, I let people come on. Hopefully somebody will. It's kind of like taking phone calls, but a little better because sometimes we get video. But I basically drop the link in the chat, and anybody that wants to can come in if they have questions or comments or you, and maybe we'll see them. Maybe it'll just be fun. So if you're up to that, that'd be cool. So, but go ahead. We have a few more minutes. I want to finish up what you want to talk about.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people know the Christian end times, but nobody knows the Jewish end times, and they're part because Israel right now is a theocracy. It's planned as a theocracy. It's pushed as a theocracy. Chabad is the most powerful Jewish organization around the world. They have billions and billions of dollars in donations, land, and other assets. Their income is $1 billion a year. It's insane, and their outreach is based on trying to get Israel people interested in the Moshiach and to return to Israel, because those are the things that have to happen. That Jews have to go to Israel, and they have to do wars of mitzvah. Well, okay, if we don't know what those are, and then they run the world on the Noahide laws, and the Noahide Institute at the UN, which you can look up, they give an address of the Chabad in New York City. Steve Cohen's the rabbi in charge of that. They self-describe as writing the laws around the world since 2006. They say that the 2030 agenda is the Noahide agenda, and that the post-2030 agenda is the Noahide agenda. So nobody, and the Sharia law boogeyman, it's not that, if people want to go and be afraid of the Muslims and spend all their time on it, it's just that we're being propagandized on that. And we're being propagandized, so we are not looking at what is set out in law, right? It's set out in law in the U.S. under Bush. It's set out every proclamation, every president. So it's left versus right. So we have the whole AIPAC franchise, and that franchise is not just in the U.S. It's in Canada. It's in every country, and so that comes out of the World Zionist Congress. There's several world Jewish congresses, and it's either on the left, which you have the B'nai B'rith, you have the communists, or it's on the right, and they're working hand in hand. And if you notice, I may not have mentioned it, but on the left we have, what is the rainbow, right? It's the flag of conquest, territorial conquest. It's the globalist flag. But on the right, what's the flag for the Noahide laws? It's the rainbow. So it's the rainbow, it's the rainbow, it's the rainbow, whether it's left or right. And people haven't really, put it all together. But that, there is a decent website. It doesn't go far enough, in my view. It's called stopnoahide.org. People should be writing that with Sharpies everywhere, especially at places like Zionist churches. And they should be dropping stickers and dropping it in comments. And so, are they trying to collect us? Possibly, but what's our option? Just sit there scared. And honestly,
I mean, I don't know what they're doing, because on somebody, again, it's probably nothing, but I don't like, somebody I don't know on X just posted something yesterday, and I couldn't even comment on it. That I have been added to the rabid Jew haters list, whatever the hell that is, on X. But I don't. I'm on so many lists, I'm sure already, but I don't like seeing that, because I know how serious Zionists play, and it's they are allowing a lot of people to say, I mean, we're discussing stuff that I didn't used to discuss on my show, not as openly as this, and but I think that, as I said, Zionism cannot be intellectually defended. It can't survive the sunlight. If you expose all this stuff, they can't argue about this. That, okay, well, this actually makes sense. We're concerned about Sharia law, but Noahide law we want to have, which is another, even if you look at it as not good or bad, it's another religious law that shouldn't be imposed on people who aren't of that religion, because that's how you object to Sharia law. But just imagine if the Catholic League of Decency had been able to get something like that imposed back in they had the morals code and films, and there was a lot of protest about that. But anyway, I want to. What I'm going to do, I'm going to drop this link here in the chat. You guys know the routine, so hopefully some people come on and join. So this is the link. So hop in. You don't have to be in video, but video is always cool. I can see what you guys look like. You know what I look like. So it's nice to see your listeners. So jump in if you want. If you have any questions for Lisa, or if you just want to rant and rave or whatever, comments. But anyhow, so this is. So you weren't disbarred. You just don't practice law anymore?
No, I was not disbarred, and I worked up until 2023 or 24 in the auto sector. I was in-house at the time, and it was just a better job in terms of being able to help with my family. And I wrote World on Mute, and I chose to not work after that. I'm not disbarred. And the reason why I chose not to work is that I wanted to be able to say the things that other people are not saying. We are the silent majority. We really, really are. Not too many people are awake on Noahide laws or that kind of extreme ethno-supremacy. In fact, most people don't even want to look at Palestine, and I certainly didn't want to, but I did a lot of research on the coming smart city agenda, which, you know, we could have just a post on a podcast on that if your audience wants. But the Global Covenant of Mayors, every city is set into a smart city. So the surveillance state that comes with the data centers, right, has to be hooked into this surveillance state. The central bank digital currency. Did you know that is also having to do with the messianic prophecies of the laws of kings and wars? Like, most people know a little bit about Christianity, that, you know, Jesus came in on a donkey because he's poor. Hey, Ham.
We have Mr. R.B. Ham, the fighting Canadian trucker from the Great White North.
I'm just going to finish the central bank digital currency as it relates to Judaism, because the prophecies and laws of kings and wars says he can't, the Messiah in Israel can't have a lot of money, right? But if that money is air and digital, if it's central bank digital currency, it doesn't technically violate owning the entire universe, right? So the central bank digital currency actually fits into the laws of kings and wars. So that I'm going to drop that into your chat, because if your audience needs to know, and it's a 12-minute read. It describes how the Noahide laws, how the war is going to go.
Put it in the regular. Put it in the comments chat.
I'm just finishing that, and I'm going to join.
If you put it in private chat, they won't see it. So put it in the comments chats. RB Ham, how you doing, brother?
Hi guys, nice to see you, Lisa. Nice to finally meet you. I've been trying to get you on my podcast ever since I started it 2 years ago. I've been reading your Substack, and it's fantastic. It's wonderful what you're doing. I wish I had met you before I decided to let the JCCF represent me in court, because I think now in retrospect, I kind of went the wrong way there, because they didn't really put up much of a fuss or a fight for me, because they were kind of hamstrung here in Saskatchewan. All the judges are politically, put in place. It's a political thing, and they refused to consider any countervailing evidence against the fact that the pandemic was declared an emergency, and I fought against that. I only got my 1 day in court. We weren't allowed to have a jury trial; it was a judge trial only, and I felt we were railroaded through really bad. And I'd like you maybe to discuss that. I mean, how our justice system completely failed anybody who tried to fight against that COVID scam that was going on, because it was like it was like you were considered a criminal and guilty before you even had a chance to,
Yeah, I have a chapter on that, and the reason. Let's look at something, okay? Every court in Canada, and definitely in North America too, posted out there, you needed to show your Vax Pass to get in, and then that's stamped with, courts of Queen Bench or whatever your court system is, right? The divisional court, right? And so what you have is you have a judicial pronouncement, right, on the vaccine. You have a judicial pronouncement. If to get into the court, you have to show your vax pass, right? What does that say to every lawyer who's practicing? What does that say? It is an equivalent pronouncement on the vaccine, right? It's been predetermined, right? They actually have shown that they had a bias by accepting the vaccine advice that they were given, right, without evidence, and then requiring anybody who's a plaintiff or who's a lawyer to show their vaccine. What they're saying is that they have actually found it. They have found and decided and pronounced, and whether a lawyer is thinking about it or not, and most don't, they are seeing, okay, judges like the vaccine, that you know, that's what it is. So it is a pre-decision, right? It is a pre-decision. I have a lot of really good stuff in the book, and I really think that you should look into it. The first third, it's in 4 sections. The first quarter of the book is the medical control, okay? And, you know, I have an example of how crooked the whole system is. And that is Charles Hoff, Dr. Hoff. He is a small town doctor, and he writes Bonnie Henry, right? And he says, and she was the chief medical officer of health of British Columbia, which is like a state, right? It's like a province, a state. It's not an equivalent system, but anyways, he says, listen, I've got all kinds of deaths and mayhem and all, you know, I'm really sad to write, but I want to let you know right away so you can pull the vaccine. But here's the carnage, right? Within 24 hours, she has said, and I have all her emails and I have them in my book. She says, report him to his governing body, right? So the Noahide courts I now see are the speech committees. The speech committees, I say, are going to replace our courts within 2-3 years, max, right? We're not going to have a court system. Your speech committee will decide based on social credit, the very thing that Donald Jeffries is asking about, right? Do you get to have a bank account? Do you get to buy gasoline? Do you get to fuel your car? Do you get to, that whole environmental system on the left has to work with the control system on the right. They're just two hands with each other. And I'll tell you, the B'nai B'rith and the communists super hate the Christians and the whites, and the on the right, the Noahiders and those outlaw it as well, right? The Christians need to be executed, and you only need to look. I do a lot of posts on what's happening in Palestine and the West Bank in terms of the elimination of Christian villages, churches. Yes. Every war in the Middle East has had a disproportionate effect on Christians. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were the seats of Christianity in Japan. South Vietnam was the seat of Christianity in the Vietnam War. So, the Apollo missions were the showcase, that was the then aliens, right? For cover stories while horrific things were taking place in wars. In terms of, I don't take cases. And the reason why I'm not taking cases is because I find my speech is much more valuable. I could go to a stacked court and do anything, but things that I'm saying, nobody else has the courage to, or they're not saying it, or they haven't articulated as I have. The second part of my book is how politics has been absorbed by the speech committees, right? And then you look at the APAC franchise, that's not there, but, that's an added consideration. So that looks at the Constitution, that looks at the lawyers, their complicity, that looks at the judges, that looks at the at the Jordan Peterson case. And an interesting part about the Jordan Peterson case, which most people don't know, is that the judge who wrote the decision, right, he was at the Law Society of Ontario, which formerly was the Law Society of Upper Canada, changed it to Law Society of Ontario, right? The globalist view, like we can't have a history, the end of the history. And he advocated the speech committees for the lawyers. So he had evidence of bias. He was the chief, the top bencher and so why didn't Jordan Peterson's lawyers contest him on the file? That the judge should not have been bringing that case because he had pre-decided it. He thought lawyers should have speech committees. So then the next part of the book is the woke agenda, and that's where I first started seeing the elimination of the womb. And that's what I've got 2 new books coming out. One is the end of the decentralized womb. Okay. And so decentralized finance, you know what that means, right? We have the centralization of everything. Well, that includes the womb. FYI, that includes centralized reproduction. So we can have a different discussion on that. Also, I brought an application. I brought all the evidence to the AIM tribunal to have the shots declared a bioweapon. And we should drop those into the comments or in the show notes afterwards, because the Alliance of Indigenous Nations, which is all around the entire planet, declared the shots a bioweapon. And I thought, wow, look at the freedom outlets aren't picking this up. Why aren't they picking this up? Because actually our heroes are manufactured, right? Albert Pike who said, if the people require a hero, we will make them. So my book, is it on Rebel? No, because I said in it long before Bondi, long before Bill C9, that you will be able to identify the globalists based on the speech you cannot have. And so one of my latest posts talks about the surveillance state, and your speech against the surveillance state, against data centers, is now extremism, right? Yep. In the UK, if you wanted historical literature for your children and you actually looked up books that weren't made since 2010, that you were extremism. So extremism is wanting your history, thinking critical, and having a voice. The last part of my book is about the emergency powers that went around the world. And so I finish with that speech is the new emergency, right? All the emergency powers that you got for a nuclear weapon being utilized for all kinds of disasters and environmental or whatever, that's the new weapon. That's the new emergency. So would I have taken your case for the JCCF? But I'll tell you, did the JCCF come out against Bill C9? No, not in the manner that I say that bill operates. And I'll just do a little deviation for there because you have an audience, okay? 2.2 of Bill C9 can declare any group a hate group. Okay. Did JCCF oppose that? No. Christianity could be declared a hate group, right? And how did the debate start on October 30th? This bill was brought in October 7th. October 7th. It said Acts, Deuteronomy, Leviticus, Romans, that's hate, right? And I just had a post. Someone had a video called the Synagogue of Satan on YouTube. And it got taken down for hate speech for that Bible verse, right? Okay. Yeah, an anti-vaccine group, a freedom group, a separation group, a political party, all could be described as a hate group. That's 2.2. Then membership in the group alone is the violation of the bill, of the criminal code. It is not your speech. So everybody's like, it's about the speech. Okay, well, I'll just be quiet. No. They can grab a whole group, right? Oh, Kafifa, that's the new symbols, opposing the war in Israel, right? That can be the group. right? Fund the war, fund the protests, make sure the protests, enrage everybody. That can be the group, right? And that prayer against the Christians, that the Shiva boys pray 3 times a day to blot us, that's against the Jewish descent too. That's against the Jewish descent. So, Christians are the warm bodies protecting the Jews right now. For real. For real. Wake up. Wake up. Okay? Then clause 4 of that, you don't hear this. Clause 4 is the forfeiture clause. It doesn't say property, thing, object. You know what it says? The means by which the offense was committed. That's the person. It's an action verb. Right? Maybe ordered forfeited to His Majesty the King for disposal as the Attorney General may direct. Right? So then you think about that. That's the capital punishment. That's the veiled capital punishment for speech that can take the whole group and send them all for decapitation. That is our Noahide law. Bill C-9 was a Noahide law. And when I brought it forth to Tamara Lynch, I was given her cell phone number, gave her the information. I wrote Rebel News. I was on with Tamara Ungoli on Bill C-293, gave her the information. Nope, not interested. Action for Canada, they're very Zionist now. Not interested, right? They're all about October 7th now. We got to do October 7th films, right? Now, I did a post exposing Pastor Arthur Pulowski, right? Is he a good guy? Right? If you go on his Facebook, you'll see those who bless Israel are blessed. Yeah. Anybody who's a pastor knows that verse actually says in every other Bible but the Schofield Bible, right, funded by Zionists, right? That Schofield Bible was funded by Samuel Untermeyer, right, who wrote the Federal Reserve Act for Rothschilds and Co. He was Rothschild's lawyers. He was a Zionist. He writes the Federal Reserve Act, and he funds the Schofield Bible. Talk about money changers in the Bible.
That's why I need you on my show, Lisa. I need to expose these Rebel News cutouts. They infiltrated the freedom movement for a reason, to divide and conquer, and that's what they've done. Because I saw that with Rebel News. I mean, by the way, have you ever seen Ben Gvir and Ezra Levant in the same room together? Huh? I mean, and Tamara Leash, and the Chris Barber. And did you notice that the Chris Barber Pat King thing going on? By the way, have you noticed they're bickering back and forth on Facebook Lives, back and forth? Chris Barber and Pat King fighting over who did what or didn't do in Ottawa. It's all a sideshow. It's all a joke. And if you look back to what happened during the Freedom Convoy, they picked out Chris Barber, Tamara Leash, and BJ Dichter, this guy who pretended to be a truck driver associated with CSIS and the CIA, was on Tucker Carlson's show. He was this guy just pulled out of nowhere and representing the Freedom Convoy. And they got together with a fourth person, a former liberal lawyer, a woman, I forget, but they pretended to be the four faces of the convoy movement and to try to negotiate something. And they were even given they're all over the place on Facebook. On Facebook Lives and YouTube Lives, and I'm going, that's because the real people, but the real good freedom fighters behind it, like Tom Marazzo and all the doctors that flew into Ottawa to try to talk sense to the federal government, they were sidelined, put in the back, and the media just focused on these four people. They really focused on Pat King because of his big mouth and his stupid ass diatribes he would on YouTube, made us all look bad. But they focused on Chris Barber and Tamara Leash, and they've been, of course, been back and forth to trials for the last 5 years, charged with mischief, and people on the left just fall for it and go, yeah, they should be in jail for life for mischief. Why? Well, they were trying to insurrection.
I have a book on the convoy coming.
Yes,
that's the one.
Good.
Okay, and it's going to blow your mind. The convoy was a false flag, designed by the CIA.
Sure.
To bring in the international AI acts and data acts and Bill C-9 and other centralization of power acts. for all of North
I just
America.
want to say, though, 95% of those truckers that went there, it was all organic, and they had the greatest.
Correct.
Correct. They were like me.
Correct.
Like, I have no axe to grind. I wasn't being directed by anybody. I'm not taking any dark money. Oh, by the way,
I know, because you know how I know? You know how I know? You don't have a big platform.
That's true.
Right? You don't have if you were part of it, you would have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of followers. Right?
Yep.
Right?
That's a hell of a note, isn't it, for us that we can't succeed, otherwise we're compromised. But I understand what you're saying. That's what people believe.
Yeah, so that Arthur Pawlowski, I have a post on him you should go into, because his father was a crypto Christian, like a crypto Jew. So his father was a priest, right? Who was Jewish, and his father got buried. I found the grave. I put the picture up. I put the whole thing. He's buried in Israel as a Jew.
Oh, interesting.
He's buried in Israel as a Jew, his dad.
Yeah, and one of Archer's big symbols he always uses is the lion, of course, and that's the Lion of Judea. I mean, come on, it's easy to see, the Lion of Judah. And of course, and I ran with all these people in Western Canada when I was doing these town halls. I met Archer, I met Laura Lynn Tyler Thompson, who's an ardent Jewish Zionist, Zionist Christian. She was always doing the Judeo-Christian thing and reading from the Old Testament all the time at our rallies. And I'm going, that's not right. And I've talked to her. I did a town hall tour in Saskatchewan with her. I've talked to her about these things. I talked to her about 9/11 and stuff. And she kind of just sits there and nods her head dumbly at me. But I could tell that she has a foundation that pays her well to do what she's doing. She inherited from an old Zionist Jewish lady that gave it to her, this foundation. And she can't veer off course. She's audience captured. If she says anything bad about Israel, she's done. And her career is done. So
yeah, well, yeah, and at some point, I probably would have, been Zionist. Maybe I didn't actually put my mind to the question, but I was propagandized, in terms of always worried about the Holocaust coming back, and I was, I've all kinds of, like I said, Jewish friends, and so I probably would have, but I never really actually put my mind to it because it's just so busy with my own life. I never wanted to get where I am right now in exposing this stuff, but it is what it is, and the truth shall set you free. But in terms of, there's a verse in Leviticus, I can't remember exactly, but it says, treat those who are on your land as you would yourself, and love them like yourself, for you were once slaves in Egypt. I am your God. So, there certainly, if you want to be Zion, if you want to look at the Old Testament, you're stuck with that verse, and show me how Palestinian Muslims and Christians are treated. They haven't had the vote. Right? What party represents them? How are they protected? There's no constitution, right? Their land's taken, right? What happened to 2.3 million displaced Palestinians? Where are they? Where's 2.3 million displaced Palestinians? And for anybody, who doesn't really understand, we're going into smart cities with RF borders, right? And I can do a whole post just on the smart cities, the C40 cities. Mandami isn't a communist, and he's not even a Muslim.
He's a neoliberal.
He is a C40 mayor.
A neoliberal construct, and yeah, I'm pretty sure he's been MK Ultra, and he was groomed and brought along too.
Mm-hmm. Right. If someone did a bet that his wife was a man,
you wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if someone did that bet, right? How you recognize the cult is men veiled as women, right? Yeah. When you get to Adam Cadman, he's the guy who is in the Garden of Eden in Kabbalah, And there he is with Eve's rib inside him. So in the Kabbalah, he's transgender.
Oh, wasn't there a pope
right?
that was a woman too?
Right, the Kabbalah and the
Somebody's claim,
Zohar. That's the whole thing. And in the Kabbalah, you know, if the Talmud, I have the soul of an animal, it's already bad enough. In the Kabbalah, I have the soul, my soul is a husk, right? Jews have an animal soul and a divine soul in the Kabbalah. My soul is a husk, and Satan got in it. And in the Messianic period, which is now, all of us husks need to be destroyed so that Yahweh and Shekinah, who are the male and female versions of God, can unite. And Yahweh and Shekinah will unite. And if the husks are blocking the root of the light so that Yahweh and Shekinah can unite, it's an absolutely, someone took LSD, wrote it all down, and made it a religion. So if we know the religion and belief systems of the ruling elite, everything becomes really quite clear, because we're actually being forced to take on a religious system. The Noahide system is just sort of the police and enforcement arm. I exposed that one of the laws in the Noahide laws are that you have to set up courts of justice. And so this yeshiva student, and he gets published, he writes that all of Palestine needs to be put to death for failing to have the judicial system set up. Well, can you believe it?
I remember Chuck Schumer a while back, about a year ago, after October 7th, said that the reason for all the death and destruction in the Middle East is because there are people there that don't follow the Torah, and so it's justified. That's what he said right out in a public speech. He said they don't follow the Torah, so they must be put, it's okay to kill them, basically. I mean, that's how they think, even the so-called liberal Zionists.
Torah is a word like safe and effective. It doesn't mean what you think it is. We think it means the Old Testament, right? So we're in Judeo-Christianity, they're represented as people of the book. Torah means teaching. The Talmud is the Babylonian Jerusalem Talmud. I think the Jerusalem Talmud has 13 books, and the Babylonian Talmud has 36. Okay? And those books they're also referred to as the Torah because they're referred to as the oral teachings set down by rabbis. Okay? And so when they say Torah, you're groomed to think safe and effective. You're groomed to think it's the Old Testament. It is not. It means teaching. And, I think the Reformed Jews, that is a creation to have kept them in Judaism without making them take on the belief system, because when I went with my ex to synagogue, and as a Christian, I was like, why are you guys all talking over the rabbi? I want to hear what he says. What is he saying? It is a social system. It is entirely a social. It's not a belief system. And I was even asked to convert. And I said, well, that's really interesting because I believe in God and you're all atheists, right? Mm-hmm. So it is a way to hide who I think would be opposed to some of this system. And I think the Jewish descent is going to eventually be part of the resistance. If not soon or already, some of them, like you've got Henry am I saying his name? Macau. You've got Elizabeth Glau.
Yeah, Macau, yeah.
Yeah, you've got who else? There's Steve and Yana Benoon.
You have Max Blumenthal.
Steve was in Chabad.
Max
Blumenthal. Although the people right now from the left may be in charge of bringing in the communist solution. So I'm hoping Max is bona fide, because I really do appreciate all his reporting. I follow him. And yeah, I think he's a really hugely important voice. But the new system that has to come up is that data center system, that surveillance system. And it's all, in COVID, they put up all the infrastructure for the smart city, okay, the cognitive city. And like going back to Mandami, he is just one of many C40 cities. The C40 city agenda is 0 kilograms of meat or dairy per person per year by 2030. So they call it communism, they call it Islam, they call it whatever. It is 0 personal vehicles. I have a post on ownership of cars. 0 personal vehicles per person per year, right? And so then it has how many items of clothing you can have per person per year. 8 items of clothing per person per year. We're staring down the barrel of a gun, and that's the 2030 agenda. And all of these agendas are so horrific that if we actually start exposing them, the house of cards will fall, right?
Yeah, that was. Yeah, I was just going to say that when we did our town hall tours, me and my buddy Mark Friesen, may he rest in peace, I was his left hand man. He was my right hand man, and we were like, I'm from the left. He was supposedly from the right. Tommy Douglas was my hero. I grew up a socialist type of trade unionist. He grew up more of a libertarian. We met each other during the Freedom Convoy and realized we had way more in common than we had that separates us. And so we went out and did these town hall tours. And what we did was educated people about Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, the whole thing. We didn't talk about, we stayed away from this whole religious thing and the whole culture thing. And we didn't delve into the transgender agenda when we were doing our town hall tours. We just wanted to talk about the 2 big ones, Agenda 2030, Agenda 21, the UN Sustainable Development Agenda, and pound that into people's heads, because that's the big danger. All these other things, the culture stuff, that's what divide and conquer us. We got to get people not so worried about that and realize just to live and let live, but they keep pushing it. For instance, last week they did the test of the Regina, Saskatchewan, of a call to prayer for the very first time in a Muslim mosque downtown for 3 minutes. Of course, it drives everybody upset. It goes on social media, and now CSIS has a list of all the people who are threatening that mosque. Right? Boom. I mean, it works right in. They play these psychological operations on people. You can tell them it's coming, but they fall for it anyway. They just, because they're,
Well, right. The Muslim boogeyman. If people knew the end of times for Muslims, is that they believe, number one, that Jesus is the Messiah. So for Christians out there who don't know that.
I thought he was one of their top prophets. They always quote him in the Quran, but he's not their Messiah, is he?
He is. He is 100%. He's referred to 3 things. He's referred to as the Messiah. They believe he is coming back. Okay. They will fight there's a hadith that says those who fight alongside of him will be saved from the fires of hell. Okay. They also believe, they call him the Word of God, which is also in John 1. Okay. So John 1, in the beginning, there was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and he created all things, right? And the darkness, and he was the light of men, and the darkness comprehended it not. And the darkness comprehended it not. So they both think he's the Messiah. Then they think he's the Word of God, which is also, and then they think he was a great prophet. Okay. And now they don't believe Muhammad's coming back. They believe Jesus is coming back. They
I'll
believe
have to ask Salim about this.
What?
Yeah, Salim, our friend Salim.
He's my Muslim friend. He's a frequent guest on my show.
Sure.
He's from a professor emeritus from the University of Western Ontario. He used to write for the National Post. He was like a right-wing Muslim after 9/11, justifying the war of terror. And he's completely reversed that, because he's come
I hope so.
Yeah, the motes out of his eye now, and he's totally with us.
Well, I remember just reading the paper the next day, and I'm like, they found passports? How is that even possible?
Well, yeah, exactly.
They found, the passports of the Muslim men, right? So,
but anyway, so I just wanted to say that, because when I talk to him about Jesus, it's true. In the Muslim religion, in the Quran or whatever, he's mentioned dozens of times. The Virgin Mary is exonerated as a they even have in Iran, they have a subway donated to the Virgin Mary. Christians live inside Iran right now.
They believe the Antichrist will come first.
Yeah, okay.
They believe the Antichrist, the great deceiver, will come first. And they believe that Jesus is the truth and will show the truth. And they think the truth that he will show is Muhammad. Okay. Whereas Christians believe the truth that he will show is just Jesus. And the difference, a very big difference, is they believe he's in heaven on the right hand of God. But they don't believe he was crucified. They believe he ascended directly.
Oh,
okay. So I'm not going to argue with anybody who's Muslim or anti-Muslim or whatever.
I remember
we are not presented the similarities, because the biggest fear of the globalists would be that if the dissenting Jews, atheists, but mostly Christians and Muslims started working together. Right. And I believe that our scripture tells us, right, to love our neighbor. And if I'm a Christian, I'm going to want to tell you about why Christ is so important to me. But I'll never be able to do that if I hate. And Christ never hated.
That's right. It's all about the love. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. The Sermon on the Mount, that's all you need to be a Christian and follow that principle. You don't need the Old Testament. You don't need Acts. You don't need the Revelations.
The Old Testament, you know what it is? The Old Testament is very, very important. The Old Testament is the Epstein files. Yeah. The Old Testament is the first release of the Epstein files. When you look at it, God, you know where God's pissed off? The Amalekites were child sacrificers. Okay. And God said, eliminate them. Right. And so when Bibi says, he's quoting more the laws of kings and wars, the Palestinians are the Amalek, or the Iranians are the Amalek. He doesn't say Amalekites. My response to that is, well, how about if you actually had killed the Amalekites and behaved, then there wouldn't be Satan worshipers around. So it's the fact that you didn't, and possibly you're doing it, means you violated your covenant with God, right?
Mm-hmm. I'm putting the link back out there again. Anybody, love to have people join in us. We have people you see on the line. They're from the Koran, Twisted Pistols, quotes from the Koran. Now you do have somebody in the chat that said,
and don't forget to get my book, guys. World on Mute. It was a bestseller until
I want a signed copy, Lisa. I want a signed copy. We'll talk.
There you go. Al N says that's not true. If they believe Jesus is the Messiah, then they would be Christian.
That's part of their belief system. So I can't tell you how to be a Christian. They obviously are not Christian, but they believe he's the Messiah. I mean, our belief in being Christian is a lot more than him simply being the Messiah, right? Because we also believe our sins are redeemed by his sacrifice. Right. And that is an important aspect, that he died for us, right? To stop the sacrifice system in the temple. And this temple thing, for people who don't know, Julian the Apostate was one of the, false Jewish messiahs. He tried to put the temple up in 451 AD. And he couldn't. He couldn't, because what happened when he tried to put up the temple is the hands of the builders would burn. There's a fault line under that temple. So the Al-Aqsa Mosque could go up, but the temple couldn't go up. The third temple couldn't go up. There was fires, there was tornadoes, there was acts of God that prevented the third temple from going up. So that's really, really, really interesting, because this whole Jewish Messiah. And they're not talking about that date of October 2nd, 2027, because they're staring down the barrel of the gun. They're going to have to rewrite their Talmud again if they can't get that third temple up. Right? In time.
Well, and I think the important thing, though, is with Zionism being debated, coming out in the open, and we're saying things we never thought we said about it, is that people are seeing, and you have people that have looked in the Quran, and Muslims that we've talked to, that Jesus is not denigrated, or whatever they exactly believe. They don't believe he was crucified. They revere him in some way. They at least think he's a prophet. You say they think he's a Messiah, which
they also think he was a prophet. But they say he's coming back. His name is Isa. The Dajjal is going to come first. That's our Antichrist. That's the Antichrist. And they're going to do battle with the Antichrist when Isa, who is Jesus, comes back. Now, listen, I'm not Muslim. That's not my belief system. So when I'm telling you this, what I am telling you is that there are similarities that are taken from us.
Yeah, and that's what I think the important thing is, that if you look at that, I don't see this tremendous antithesis where, that Muslims hate Christians, and yet we do see in the Talmud, at least, whether these passages are true or not about Jesus and excrement and these kind of things. I mean, that's obviously at a whole different level, in terms of how they look at Jesus. So I think it's funny when you look at the Christian evangelicals, especially, who are constantly reiterating that, we have to support Israel and they're the allies of the Christians. Well, it doesn't look like they feel this is positive about Jesus as the Muslims do.
And what is even more ironic is during the Middle Ages, when there was a purge of Jews in Europe, especially in Spain during the Reconquista, it was Muslims that sent ships. The Ottoman Empire sent ships to Spain to ferry Jews away that could get out of there before they had to before they were forced converted into Christianity. So, and Jewish synagogues and whatever Jewish communities lived in the Middle East, in Iraq and Iran. They're still in Iran, and in Egypt, and amongst the northern Africans, the Sephardic Jews. There were a lot of Jews under the Islamic Caliphate that I think they had to pay extra taxes, but they weren't persecuted like we're told they were. They sure weren't. They weren't Holocausted. They survived there for thousands of years. I mean, you got to start thinking deeper than this.
Are you aware of Sabbatai Zevi?
Yes, I am.
So so Sabbatai Zevi, for people who aren't aware, he was he declared in 66 that he was the Jewish Messiah. And his version of the Old Testament was, thou shalt murder, thou shalt commit adultery, thou shalt, thou shalt deceive, thou shalt lie. All the do nots of the Old Testaments became do's. And so he celebrated Purim with wife swapping. He had a sex cult. And he went down to Jerusalem with his followers. He had over 1 million followers that believed he was the Jewish Messiah. And he asked the Sephardic Jews to affirm him as the Jewish Messiah. And fortunate for the world, they refused. And I think it set up a secret war between the Satanic Jews and the non-Satanic Jews, really, at that point. And then he was forced to convert to Islam. Well, he could have decided to die, but the Sultan at the time saw that his movement was so destructive to society that he's, convert to Islam. And that became the Dawn May. And so he did convert to Islam. And at that point, his followers believed that, you're supposed to convert to other religions and hide your satanic practices. So that's a really important thing, because we see a pollution in a lot of different religions that has some dark pedophilia. We have all kinds of issues. And then Jacob Frank, about 100 years later, said, hey, I'm the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, and I'm the Jewish Messiah. And he caused he had a big following too. And his version of Satanism was to up one notch. And his version was, well, the Talmud says, God's only going to come when we're really, really good or we're really, really bad. And since we can't be really, really good, that's too hard. We'll just be really, really bad and sort of like yin and yang, and we'll just do all kinds of satanic things and it'll bring God. So his version of Satanism was to commit the most amount of sins from sun up to sundown, right? Like just, and what happened with that was he ended up converting to Catholicism. And so we have an infiltrated church in Catholicism. So, the infiltration of the satanic movement is not merely within Judaism, it's within the evil is happening. Evil is happening in a lot of different religions.
Hey, Don, is there a way I can share the screen right now?
You should be able to. There's a question, Lisa. Do you believe Steve and Jana Banoon? You know who they are?
What do you mean? Do I believe everything that they say? I mean, I'm a big follower of theirs. I've been on their show more than once. I've been on a podcast with Steve and Jana in terms of regarding the Noahide laws. So I think you should look at my show recently. It has had a huge amount of views on Steve's Israeli News Live. I was on Israeli News Live. I was on Geopolitics and Empire recently. You should also see that show because that's the show where I exposed the UN in terms of the Noahide laws. And so the Noahide laws are the biggest threat. I do think going into the Muslim Christian dynamic is important, but we're funding. Look at ISIS. ISIS is the name of the old gods of the Canaanites, of the Phoenicians, right? Ra, Isis was another one of them. And Isis is the name of who's decapitating Christians across the Middle East and Africa, but they never harm Israel, right? And they have been exposed. They have been exposed as having IDF members in ISIS. So we have a lot of become the top, right? Just think of the COVID operation. It only worked because everybody at the top of all institutions were captured. Really? And then roll it out, right? It didn't matter whether those people were left. It didn't matter those people were right. Become the top. And one of the things about, if you want to look at the wars right now, wherever they're breaking out and whoever's on whatever sides, I have two things to say about that. One is all 193 countries in the world signed the Pact for the Future, which inputted the surveillance data state. Okay, so which makes all of us global citizens, right? So if you're self-interested enough to go to war, right? War is just a vaccine side effect for people who are on COVID. War is just another vaccine side. It's just another depopulation. It's another population activity. So they don't believe in their citizens enough to carve out nationalism, but they sign the Pact for the Future, all of them. So
I share. Is that what you wanted to share, RB?
Yeah, so it's May 28th, 2026. This is just to back up, Lisa, what's going on in Israel, especially. So this is from the Cradle. Israeli Settlement Council admits to systemic ritual sexual abuse of children following bombshell media investigation. The Gush Etzion Regional Council in the occupied West Bank has issued an unprecedented public admission acknowledging severe, multi-participant, ritualistic sexual abuse within the settler community, which involved the gang rape of children. The official statement marks a dramatic reversal for the settlement's leadership, which had spent years systematically denying and dismissing allegations of sadistic abuse. The official acknowledgement follows a damning investigative report by journalist Roni Singer on Israel's Can 11 channel, which aired identical testimonies from live independent victims detailing organized ritualistic assaults. Confronted with recorded evidence and professional corroboration, the council released a statement denouncing the perpetrators and describing the uncovered acts as pure evil and immoral distortion. In an effort to manage the immense public fallout, the Settler Council published crisis hotline numbers and urged further victims to come forward. The media exposure and subsequent admission are expected to force Israeli police to reopen previously shelved complaints and expand criminal investigations into what is emerging as one of the most organized abuse scandals inside the settlement enterprise. Now, the only reason that's news is because they got caught. How many others are doing that? And do you think they sent a strongly worded letter? They're going to open up a crisis line and encourage others to come forward. And when those others come forward, they'll be you know what'll happen to them. I mean, this is unbelievable. So that's just to back you up what's going on with that mindset of these people, these Sabbatean Frankists. They're not normal Jewish people. These people they're worshiping Baphomet, they're worshiping Baal, they're worshiping some horrible thing, ritualistic children abuse, gang rapes of children, and it goes on and on and on.
Which is all outlawed and described extensively in the Old Testament, right? In Leviticus and Deuteronomy. So I recently just learned, all the church bells that they took down, right? There's two things about them. Okay, they used to sound at a hertz that was healing, right? So if you know that sound waves can be healing, and then sound waves can actually be DNA disruptors, right? The same way that we respond to light. So, but they were also designed as exorcist bells. So one of the things that I found astounding was that the Pope, not this one, but the last one, wanted to eliminate exorcisms, right? Getting rid of demons, right? And in the Bible, Jesus describes how to get rid of demons and how to do it. And so they put certain prayers within the construction of the bells themselves. And apparently the sounding of those bells was performed exorcisms, right? So would a demonic order want to take down those bells? Those bells are destroyed. They're buried. You can't find them. The Noahide system says they're going to get rid of every mosque and every church. And in Canada, I had pulled the official party question that was posed by the Conservative Party. It asked, how many churches were burned between 216 and 223, right? The answer was 463. 463 churches burned. Imagine that was a synagogue. Imagine it was one synagogue that burned, right? So you have a government jihad against Christianity. Then they bring the laws that punish churches financially. That got defeated. Then they bring Bill C9, which everybody talked about the speech, but not the fact that it was a Noahide decapitation bill. So, and they're going after those who oppose the war as well, right? So the Kafifa could be a symbol that's outlawed. The cross could be a symbol that's outlawed. Being a freedom group could be a symbol that's outlawed. The only thing I say is that we're actually doing spiritual battle and we do not know it. Like we are doing a spiritual battle against demon worshipers. I have a friend who's formerly from the UN and formerly of that world. Okay. In fact, this person was on the committee that came up with the name climate change. There were 8 people that changed global warming to climate change. She's on that committee. She says they all do adrenochrome, that whole globalist set. They all do adrenochrome. And I said, you want to know why? I said, yes, I do. I want to know why people are so sick and sadistic. And she says, it's a drug. And so this vampirism is outlawed in the Bible. And God describes why it's outlawed. Because the life of the individual is in the blood, right? Now, the Noahide laws say you cannot eat the portion of an animal. Remember, you and I have the soul of an animal, a portion of them, but you can eat the whole, right? Just like you can't turn off the light
Wow.
on Shabbat.
That's terrifying.
Right? Okay. Now, she says they do it. They do it. It's a high. They do it. It's a high with no hangover. But the second reason she said they do it,
I can see it.
it allows them to talk to demons.
Wow.
It allows them to see the spiritual world and see what is around us. But they're fools. They are such fools because Satan is the ultimate deceiver. He's the, either as a lion stalking us, or he's the light, right? Lucifer, the light. What is in New York? What is that Statue of Liberty? I have a whole post on the Masonic satanic individual and organization that sent it. That is Lucifer summoning the legions. That is.
Well, there's also that picture of the Jacob Rothschild and that crazy spirit cooking lady. I forget her name, Marina Brovovich or something.
Oh, yeah. Abramovich.
I would use different pronouns. I would say Mario.
Mario
Abramovich.
But they famously
if you look at the satanic mass, they list every satanic operative, and including popes and what have you, that they have infiltrated and brought into our society.
Why do you think the Pope wears a yarmulke?
Right. And is that a male pope? Is it?
Well, let's see. I gotta share the screen here, Don.
Sure, good.
Yeah, quickly share that. I'm going to tell you what that is.
Well, my hands are all tied up with this crazy dog. I'm trying to
hear you.
Okay, there you go.
So, can anyone explain why the Paul VI hall has the shape of the head of a snake? There are no crucifixes, and a sculpture of Jesus rising up from a nuclear explosion in the Holocaust does not look like Jesus, but rather the devil. Did the Pope or Vatican do this on purpose? So there's just showing you that's the hall. Now I'm going to.
That's in the Vatican.
That's in the Vatican. That is the hall. There is worse. There's even worse.
I'm going to. Yes.
I did an exposure on the pedophilic symbols in the Vatican, and for all of you out there who might be, using the rainbow, that the trans flag has triangle within triangle within triangle within triangle. That is the FBI acknowledged symbol for pedophilia. Small triangle inside big triangle. Benjamin Moore has it. Like you have now. They are announcing who they are, right? The Dumoulins version of the Masons, right?
Yeah.
I have an expose on them as the pedophilic organization that went after the everyday child, as opposed to the guys with the hats there who went after the.
All right, Don, share the next screen.
Okay.
I think this is a closer up view of his hall, and there is Jesus portrayed as being, I don't know.
Wow, it's like a bird or something. Or
he's being.
It's demonic. It's a demon.
Yeah,
it's up is down and down is up. That is a demon.
That's incredible.
Okay. So I posted recently on an exorcist. Okay, he says every time a child is abused under 3, it's how they do MK Ultra. The sodomy of the child is MK Ultra. And when Jesus says, what is your name? And the demon answers, I am Legion, for we are many. And he casts out those demons. The exorcist explains that those demons are from ritual sodomy abuse of children up until the adult. At each time a demon is created. And so this exorcist casts out the demons from child abuse, from sodomy, from that thing. And so what we're creating is a demonic world order, and we do not understand it. We secularize the space, right? So part of allowing Muslim prayers and pushing the Muslim prayers in front of everybody is so that then the reaction to that is going to be, well, we need mandatory secularization. Then, Netflix, your music industry,
Lucy, we could go on because this is all very interesting stuff, but we're out of time. I want to make sure you have a chance. RB too, or RB first. To you, well, tomorrow night, Beyond the Pale, the podcast. Hopefully, Lisa will be on at some point soon. I'll be on with RB and Salim Masur again. I guess again tomorrow, 10 p.m.
We don't know if it's Salim's. I don't think Salim's going to be there because he's on vacation down in Mexico.
Oh, okay. All right. So it'll be 10 p.m.
Matthew Aaron making an appearance.
Okay, on RB Ham's Beyond the Pale Rumble channel. Thanks, RB, as always.
I'm on YouTube now too, guys. I'm on YouTube.
I was on YouTube as well. Yeah.
Yep.
Laura, Lisa, Moran, you're a great guest. We could have you on plenty of times to talk about more of this stuff. But anything else you want to add quickly, and anything you want to promote your book, your website, or Substack, whatever you want.
Okay, guys, I want you to learn about the Noahide laws. A good website is stopnoahide.org, just as an intro. You have to get into my Substack. I've given some links that'll go to the show notes. My book is World on Mute. It is a book about censorship and going to one speech. And you can find me at lawyerlisa.substack.com. I think we have to work together. That's going to be the Jewish descent. That's going to be Muslims and Christians and atheists. And I think we have to understand this is actually a spiritual battle too. And that's it. And honestly, I am a Christian, and I will plug Christ because I love him. There you go.
Me too. Thank you so much, Lisa. Fascinating guest. We're going to definitely have to have you back on. And again, I apologize. I've been distracted by this dog. We didn't lose power. We didn't have a storm, but I do have a crazy dog here. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, RB. Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, everybody, for listening to I Protest. And we'll see you next week, same time. Take care.
Okay, bye, guys. Thanks for listening.